the 12th day of November 2024. I'm going to be your host. I'm Dana. Hope you're doing well. You can call in. We do these shows typically 5 days a week. We're in Canada. You can call in at 709-589-4406. Hope everybody's doing okay. Should the International Atomic Energy Agency and the media be banned at Conference of Parties 29 and forever after due to their cover-up of the Fukushima-induced extinction level event? If you're not familiar with it, Fukushima's nuclear meltdowns has been catastrophic to the species and humans worldwide. And the reason we want media banned is because they're pretending they're in reactor 4, for instance, and they also covered up the emissions, the catastrophic emissions from these each building this is reactor 3 and 4, each of these buildings had around 8 reactor cores and the 2 fuel pools at the top of the buildings. International Atomic Energy Agency arrives at Conference of Parties 29. The Conference of Parties 29. Now, I think last year was the first year that they participated. And now they're just taking over. We can't do anything. It doesn't matter what the problem is, you need nuclear, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency. If you don't like the color of your grass in your garden, you need nuclear from the International Atomic Energy Agency to figure out why it's not the right shade of green. If the whales are all emaciated from Fukushima, you need the International Atomic Energy Agency to blame you for it. Your tin cans, your pop bottles, your cardboard. And the media just flocks to them like a magnet because that's their payday, right? Raphael Grossi. The International Atomic Energy Agency has arrived at Conference of Parties 29 in Baku. And in order to get a booth there, you need $500,000. So you're priced out of the debate, right? And if you don't have a booth, you don't have a narrative. Ready to talk about the value of nuclear science? Now, Raphael Grossi is the so-called Director General. But he takes his marching orders from UN, of course, like everybody else with the subsidies of UN. In the fight against climate change. And of course, climate change is a result of 80 years of emissions from the nuclear industry, the dumping, the unmitigated emissions from 1,000 fuel pools every day worldwide. And the emissions never go away. They never stop pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. Tripling nuclear energy by 2050. Of course, it's simply not true. There is no nuclear renaissance. This year was 660, they're expecting 660 gigawatts. The total capacity of nuclear worldwide is 365 or so gigawatts. And renewables, like solar power in particular, this year alone, only solar power, is going to be around 660 gigawatts worldwide. Almost double the total capacity of 80 years of nuclear. Is almost doubled in just solar power alone this year in a 12-month period. They'll take down the whole planet with them. As nuclear power's essential role was widely recognized. It wasn't widely recognized, it was... There is no nuclear renaissance. If it was widely recognized, then there would be a nuclear renaissance, right? It's completely dishonest. The world has spoken. Countries want viable solution. The world has spoken. So, who are these people that are speaking for you without your consent and without any kind of referendum? They're not your friends, are they? And Net Zero was a paper written by Miles Allen, who's an adjunct professor. Got a cushy little job at Cambridge in the United Kingdom. And then the United Nations, which is IAEA, seized upon that paper and is using it to bludgeon you out of a future. Science. Nuclear science also helps us adapt to the effects of climate change. The climate change is caused by 8 decades of emissions. And Fukushima itself was a pulse event. The model you're looking at is the French model shortly after Fukushima. It's based on 16 days of radioactive fallout from Japan when the model stops. And you're talking about 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. And cesium-137 pulses energy 600 feet every second. Carbon doesn't have those attributes. Carbon doesn't make plumes that covers the entire planet. Carbon creates insects and birds and trees and butterflies and puppies and everything else. And you and me. And without it, we would look like the moon. So there's something very sinister going on. Nuclear science also helps us adapt to the effects of the climate change. And so they're talking about plants, such as breeding crops with increased resilience to drought. So they radiate endless seeds, and they hope that some of the seeds will have attributes that they can trick you into utilizing. But it's a mutation that you don't want. Because anthropogenic man-made radiation is not created by the sun. These elements are not found in the solar system. These are man-made, and that's what we call them, anthropogenic man-made. And anything that radiation can mutate, the humans can splice together and do a much better job, much easier, much quicker. And there's tons of plants that grow in drought-stricken areas that bear fruit and products acceptable to the human digestive system. The anthropogenic man-made stuff is simply not the way you should go. Science is really clear about that. And they have meddled in every facet of our life, and they're not elected, they're not appointed, they're a corporation. And they have co-opted, through sedition, 200 countries, basically, worldwide, will buy into whatever their next narrative is. And it's simply about poisoning us. The best way to describe these people are as terrorists. If you were to write a book on terrorism, you would look no further than UN, would you? And you would see all the attributes that you wouldn't want in a society right smack there. Who are these people? Why are they getting prominence in your countries? And why are you putting up with it? Nuclear techniques can even map how climate change is affecting. I mean, these people are actually crazy. This is the definition of crazy. The atmosphere, the oceans, the ecosystem, your toenails, you name it. The nuclear can figure it out. These are insane people. They've never been challenged. No one's really allowed to challenge them. You can tell I'm not a challenge to them, am I? I got how many people on my show after a decade? 14 people, bless your hearts. 11 thumbs up. 13 votes. The atmosphere, the ocean, the ecosystem. Let me explain that to you, actually. I'm a researcher. I go out and do research expeditions. Post Fukushima, what I found was the species to your left are exterminated. They're exterminated due to radioactive fallout from Japan and the 80 years of emissions. Species to your left, you'll never see them again in the Pacific. Species to your left are now extinct, and we know this because we had spent 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year doing research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. Very painful stuff. Very, very resource intensive, and it failed many, many, many times. I've long lost track of how many times I failed. But yet we kept persevering, and we have the documentation to show that this is an extinction event. And pretending it's not an extinction event means you're stupid. And you're basically worthless as a human. Because when you see all these species disappear and that doesn't concern you, then you are lacking a whole lot of attributes that are important to be a human. Species to your left are extinct. The species to your right is what it now looks like. And we know this because we painstakingly done species counts for 4 to 5 months a year for 6 years. The species never came back. And denying that means you're a fool. Not giving it the prominence that it deserves means that you're not helping yourself or anybody else. You're not a benefit to your family or this planet. More than 1,100 world leaders to convene at the Conference Parties 29 Climate Summit. So what? By the way, the world leaders are not supposed to be meeting in secrecy and cooking up policies without the consent of the countries they represent. And when they go down and do that, they no longer represent the countries they came from, do they? Even the scores are skipping the annual talks, orchestrated by what Dwight Eisenhower described as the military-industrial complex. And Joe Biden does not plan to travel to Baku. But the United States has sent a high-powered delegation in an effort to underline its work to address climate change ahead of the Donald Trump's return. And you see that narrative everywhere. In January, we'll inaugurate a president whose relationships to the climate change is captured by the words hoax and fossil fuels, Podesta, the senior advisor to the president for the international climate policy, told delegates on Monday. None of this is a hoax. It is real, and it's a matter of life and death. Yeah, and it's caused by 80 years of emissions from the nuclear industry. We have wiped out the species. And Fukushima was a pulse event, and that was the straw that broke the 8 million species backs. And delegates are calling this the Finance COP, and using the word COP is such a dishonest and disrespectful thing to do. As leaders are aiming to create a new target for funding climate action in developing countries, but such negotiations are expected to be difficult and contentious. And look at all the people that proudly stuck their name on the story. This couple of paragraphs. And think about this arrogance, this incredible hubris. World leaders aim to shape Earth's future at Conference Parties 29. world leaders are going to shape humanity's future without a consent of humanity, with a referendum of anybody or any country. This is the ultimate betrayal. When a handful of people who are bought and paid for by an organization that's not appointed, not elected, is going to set policies that's going to affect your loved ones forever. And the policies are meant to take away their freedoms, their sovereignty, and their liberties. How is that acceptable to sit in silence while you're being exterminated next? Aims to shape the Earth's future. And they got all the media at their fingertips to push out their propaganda. The goal of figuring out how much wealthy countries should pay. So they're going to loot your countries to the max. And there's no accountability. There's no oversight. You're left out of the equation. And when you give, this organization wants $70 trillion, which would make them enormously powerful. They're also a military. They have one of the world's biggest militaries, 200 countries. They have nuclear weapons, nuclear aircraft carriers, submarines, jets, satellites, standing armies, navies, air forces. And yet they're not a country, they're not a government. They don't come with the consent of the population of the planet. And this is the most dangerous cult I've ever seen. The only way to describe this organization and their subsidies are as a cult. With the goal of figuring out how much wealthy countries should pay. It's remarkable, isn't it? And they have nothing but the worst intentions for you and for the species. 197 nations who signed on to the United Nations framework. No, the nations didn't sign on to it. You bought and paid for, a politician did. And to suggest that United Nations, which used to be the League of Nations, pre-Hiroshima Nagasaki, it's an absolute crime. More than 40,000 people are expected to attend. Diplomats, scientists, activists. It's interesting, I'm not invited. Or welcomed. Lobbyists are, though. 450 carbon lobbyists were there last year, which is illegal under the constitutions, the Magna Cartas, the Bill of Rights. Environmentalists, environmental groups, really. The industry's environmental group. From countries who ratified a treaty aimed at preventing dangerous human interference with climate. Well, if you want to stop that, you got to get rid of nuclear. Nuclear is the only thing that can affect the climate. Gas, oil, and coal can't affect the climate. It's absurd to suggest it could, but nuclear certainly can. This is a plume coming out of Japan. After 16 days, the whole planet, every species is irradiated permanently. Do you get it yet? Will you ever get it? You got any idea how late it is? How far down the hole we actually are? They got 80 years on you already. It's never too late to make a stand, though. I made my stand a long time ago. Oh. Billions of people are counting on us. I mean, this kind of hubris is absurd. These people are literally insane. And then they're going around acting like they're the saviors of humanity when they're the absolute opposite. Plan to remove the United States from the Paris Climate Accord if he was elected at the time by Trump. Like, why would you want to join an organization that has the worst intentions for humanity and the species? An organization that promotes the most lethal technology, nuclear power. That every nuclear power plant worldwide is surrounded by farms for hundreds of square miles. It's not safe to go to your supermarkets anymore because every nuclear plant has multiple fuel pools. Every fuel pool is splitting atoms into the environment. Where do you draw a line? You can't fight climate change without getting rid of nuclear. Nuclear is the enemy of humanity and the species. Without no nuclear meltdowns, without no wars, without no dumping of nuclear, the emissions from the fuel pool will eventually exterminate all the species on the planet. Because when you take the reactor core after 14 months and you put it in the fuel pool, there's no containment. The reactor cores, which are normally producing energy for 1 million businesses and homes, by producing power by splitting atoms, is still splitting atoms, but there's no containment anymore. It's not in the containment. Those atoms never go away. It's like an invisible snowstorm, and it never goes away. It never stops snowing. And this particular stuff pulses energy almost at the speed of light every second for millions of years. What is the Paris Agreement? Conference of Parties 29 is associated with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And the founding treaty of UN, which doesn't have any sovereignty over any country on the entire planet, it's just a corporation with an enormous amount of power that it should never, ever, under any circumstances have. Signed onto a treaty in June of 1992 in Rio de Janeiro under President Bush. A global agreement by almost 200 countries to combat climate change. But it's not a global agreement by 200 countries, is it? It's a global agreement by 200 politicians bought and paid for by UN, who are in a position to change laws that would drown your countries in debt forever. And by proxy, too, would end up poisoning your countries forever. And anybody who joins their so-called treaty, if they want to leave, it takes a whole year. So you're not joining something. You're becoming part of a cult. When you can't walk out the door, that means you're in a cult. These people are insane. And they know exactly what they're doing. They have 3,700 medias that are participating in order to spread the propaganda far and wide. So Associated Press has 1,500 medias that will immediately regurgitate whatever story they put up. Reuters is the same thing. With 1,800 medias will immediately regurgitate the headline that Reuters put up. This is not media. This is a weapon that is fine-tuned and now is destroying everything. And the only way United Nations can exist is if it consumes everything and everybody. It destroys everything and everybody. That's their legacy. Everything they touch turns to stone. UN chief. Imagine the unbelievable pompous, hubris, arrogance to suggest that they're the only ones that can come up with a solution. Say, pay up or face climate-led disaster for humanity. Yesterday, in the first few hours, they passed a climate economics, carbon economics, that will tax everybody on the planet. You got to have $500,000 just to have a little tiny boot. So there's no way the average person can be there. UK vows to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 81% on the 1990 levels by 2035. In 11 years, really. UK, the people that has to get other countries to do their construction. Global carbon market gets a green signal at Conference of Parties 29. Nobody even knew what was happening, and they came out. The first announcement they made yesterday on day one was a global carbon market. You guessed it, regulated by, United Nations. Behind closed doors. It's really something. It's really, how are you going to have a future sitting in silence, I wonder? Along with hundreds of thousands of journalists. Nations approve a new UN rules on carbon market. UN rules on carbon markets. It's absurd. Unelected, unappointed organization with no sovereignty over any country has spent all these decades just taking over every facet of your lives. Your water, your food, everything is dictated by UN, right? And who are these people? These unelected gods. Eisenhower called them a military-industrial complex. One credit equals a ton of prevented or removed heat-trapping carbon dioxide. And so suggesting that carbon traps heat is the most insane assertion conceivable. Heat is produced, it's not trapped. The sun puts more joules on this planet than humanity could ever dream of each day. This is a plume model of Fukushima covering the entire planet. That plume never goes away. It never stops coming out. And it's pulsing energy, like an invisible snowstorm, pulsing energy every second worldwide. Full body x-rays for every species in the meadows and the forest. It's despicable. It's unacceptable. Greta Thunberg. That's what they call an activist, apparently. Somebody who knows nothing about anything, but is a perfect, useful idiot. They call her a climate activist. Yeah. It looks like I'm going to be down for a while. I got had a few issues today. I shouldn't be doing the show tonight. Fukushima nuclear debris arrives at a lab. This will be my last story tonight. And hopefully I'm back on Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday. Fukushima nuclear debris arrives at a lab after a secret journey. Try wrapping your mind around this statement. Secret journey. This is a country that has 30 million one-ton bags of radiation, where fuel particulates are found symmetrically throughout the entire country. This is a country that the first year after Fukushima had 865,000 extra cancers, and is now saying that the little sliver, the size of a grain of rice, fuel that they allegedly took out of reactor 2, which burned constantly for days and liquefied. We've never seen that in the history of humanity. Arrives at a lab after a secret journey, after a journey kept secret for safety reasons, because they were afraid somebody might hijack a grain A piece of fuel the size of a grain of rice. A piece of fuel the size of a grain of rice. And so they cloak it in this narrative that there's a secrecy and it's very dangerous and they're doing the best they can. And these are people that are insane. And this is the French press, the French government, AFP. The announcement comes after operator Tokyo Electric Power Company said last week that a tricky trial debris removal operation is where they used a set of tongs. They call it a robot for some reason. And that's what it does, it pinches. Like they're the only one who ever invented it or something. A specially developed extendable device. Look, they spent $48 million on a set of tongs to reach down and grab a piece of fuel. It's the most daunting challenge in the decades-long decommissioning project because of the dangerously high radiation levels. It makes me so upset I can barely hold on to my rage. These people are claiming they're on top of a melted reactor watching the fuel coming out of a pool that doesn't even exist, a building that doesn't even exist. It doesn't exist. And I created this picture over 10 years ago. And every Greenpeace on the planet that I tweeted this to blocked me and removed the picture. Greenpeace Canada, Greenpeace United States, Greenpeace UK, Greenpeace New Zealand, Greenpeace Australia, all blocked me because I tweeted that picture and they removed that picture. All I done was ask them to retweet it so we can have a conversation. Citing safety concerns. 0.7 grams, 0.02 ounces. Because fuel weighs really heavy. It's the size of a grain of rice. A robot. And all it does, it does that. It's not a robot. It's just a stupid pneumatic hydraulic system that's controlled by a person and does that. These people are actually insane. But the population doesn't know any better. The Japanese Atomic Energy Agency has said it would need at least 1 gram to conduct a proper analysis. But they didn't get a gram. They got 0.7 grams. 0.7 of a gram. 3 of the Fukushima 6 reactors. See, they don't count reactor 4. Do you think that reactor to your left is damaged? Or am I just blowing it out of proportion? If you think I'm blowing it out of proportion, give me a thumbs down. There's 4 reactors, and it could be the spent fuel pool and reactor 6. Top of each of the buildings is around 8 reactor cores and 2 fuel pools. So you're talking about 36 reactor cores are missing. We know they're missing because the evidence is really clear about it. But no, officially, everything I'm showing you never happened as of August the 24th last year. Those 2 buildings didn't melt down. They didn't blow up. Everything was perfect. And everything is sitting in 1,000 tanks. Dana, have a nice day. No debate allowed. And it doesn't matter if your loved ones get sick and die from the cancers because you sat in silence or because they made you silent. The journalists will cut your throat, won't they? They're telling you that they're at the top of the buildings. They've done it with both buildings, by the way. Claimed they're at the top of it and everything was hunky-dory. How do you reconcile this? How do you pretend this never happened? Went into, I've never heard these, only the last 2 years, this particular framing. Meltdown. Japan last year. Began releasing. So they say this happened in 2011, and nothing got out of these buildings until last year. That's what they're telling you. You are in real danger. They're saying they're dumping stuff into the ocean as treated. They're telling you at the top of a building that don't exist. And they're saying these reactors didn't melt down and everything is perfect. They got all the fuel out of the pools and everything's safely stored. And it's not, is it? Calling these people crazy would be polite. International Atomic Energy Agency says Japan is accurately monitoring radiation exposures of workers. Not Japan, but TEPCO, a corporation that is not a nuclear expert, they're just an operator, is now the authority. That way you don't blame the nuclear industry. And last year, the International Atomic Energy came out and said that Fukushima didn't even melt down. Everything is in the tanks and it's only tritium, right? Where do you draw a line, I wonder? Why does humanity just let these people vomit all over their future and their loved ones? You can't have a future and the United Nations at the same time. So today I went out because we got a significant rainstorm for the next 3-4 days. It's going to rain for the next week. My brakes and the drums showed up, so I decided I was going to go out, even though it's raining, and do it because I'm broke ass fucker and I can't afford to do it. Get a mechanic to do it. I have to do it. An old man like me has to go do everything himself. And so I ended up mangling my right hand. I mean, I mangled that thing with the grinder, trying to clean off the area where the brakes are going to sit, right? And there's special bandages, they stay on. And so the grinder caught my sleeve and just ripped my whole hand apart. I was debating whether I could do a show and not have been in so much pain. So I had a friend come over to help me bandage up everything, clean everything up, and see if I needed to go to the hospital or what, right? And I decided I can bandage everything up and just sit it out for a few weeks. So I went in to get the peroxide. When I came out, the steps it's raining, and boom, I land on the edge of the steps coming down. So I wrecked my hip and my back. Like I got a bruise on my hip, probably about this big, purple and yellow. And then my back is the top, about shoulder to shoulder, right down the spine, and the lower lumbar part of my spine. It's just aching. I'm hoping tomorrow when I wake up, it'll be a little bit better. And I'm terrified it's going to be worse. And I decided that if I fell asleep and I woke up and it was going to be worse, then there's no way I'm going to get a show out tonight. And the reality of it is I can barely hold on to the mouse here tonight. I just can't do it. And so I'm going to give it up. And I can't play guitar. Can't do anything. So I'm going to sit it out, do nothing until Sunday. Hopefully I can be back on Sunday or sometime next week anyway. But I'm really upset because United Nations is out there taking away our future. And there's no one out there going to call them on it. And what they're doing is outrageous in every sense of that word. They're going to war against you and your loved ones and your species, what's left of it after Fukushima and the 80 years of emissions from the nuclear industry. And not having anybody out there, at least somebody, pushing back is just heartbreaking. Should the International Atomic Energy Agency and the media be banned at Conference of Parties 29 due to their cover-up at a Fukushima-induced extinction-level event? And this is unequivocally an extinction-level event. I see the spammers are here again tonight. Well, yes, they should, Dana. Yes, they should. Okay, we'll see everybody on maybe Sunday. Hopefully we'll be back. But I couldn't do very much today. And we managed to get the brake put on the passenger side anyway, but I got to bleed all of that. It's not going to happen until next week. I'm out of the picture officially. I can't do anything, and I shouldn't, because my hand ain't going to get better. And it just saddens me. It really saddens me that there's not going to be anybody out there thumping these disgusting parasites. It is what it is. Nothing I can do about it. If I don't let it heal, then it's going to get worse. And the amount of pain today was unbelievable. And the same thing tonight. It's just heartbreaking. And then the spammers showed up and started spamming me, because that's what cowards do. They have my phone number. They could have called in. But cowards don't do that, right? And I'm going to go put ice on it right now. The swelling's not too bad, but it's pretty brutal. We'll see everybody tomorrow night, or Sunday night, hopefully, or Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. We'll see you when things get better, okay? Take care now.
In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams. Chicago division, fueled by heated dreams. Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says, Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford show, the chatter's turning wild, but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm to see life. He chuckles in the static, cuts through the strife. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show. With a snap and a grin, Charlie's voice so clear scatters the dread, dispels all the fear. Mux didn't hurt, he croons with a sigh. Science is for thinkers, not a whim or lie. Though Dana and the crowd may shout and roar, Charlie's unfazed, he's heard it all before. His swinging rationale, like a soothing song, says, hold on to logic, we gotta stay strong. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show.